Alrighty, welcome to part 2, creating the Wild Warriors comic book cover for issue 5. We are ready, we are set and ready to go, now with colors. So there are a couple of tools that I like using here, and there are a couple of techniques that I would like to share with you. First off, right now on the screen, you can tell that there are two different images. One I use to start referencing the colors from. So one of the tools that I use a lot to do for this stage is the eyedropper tool. You can select the letter I in your keyboard using Photoshop, and that's the keyboard shortcut. So I just press the letter I, select that eyedropper tool, and then switch back and forth, selecting each one of the colors of the character. This way, the colors will remain true to what you see inside of the comic. And like I mentioned in my previous video, that to me is very important, that consistency. Now, this might not be the best way to approach colors. There are other techniques, other different ways to even approach the color palette, right? For each character, in which you can go to the swatches and just save those swatches and just have them ready. Now that does takes a little bit of time to set up, and I personally have done it on the past, but then I have switched computers. I may not be working on my same computer all the time, like I mentioned before on the previous video. Sometimes you have to make do. So I think that the best way of approaching something like this, where you don't have your swatches set up correctly in your own program, then all you have to do is just grab an image that is already colored. Because the comic book, the actual issue, is already done, I just decided to open one of those pages and now literally just transfer the color over, like I said, using the eyedropper tool. Another tool that I like using here is that lasso tool. You would see me making lots of selections here. Especially now where I'm just laying down the color. This process, you might have heard this term before, flats, adding the flats. That's what it is. I'm just adding flat colors that will represent the overall tonality that my cover will ultimately have. So once I'm done with adding those flat colors, I like also using my lasso tool, start making some selections and start adding where some of the lighting might be coming from. All right, I believe that, you know, not only is important knowing where the lighting is coming from when you're doing your inking, but also when you're doing your coloring. Things have to be somehow consistent, and you know, having a consistent source of light can make wonders. At this point, I have already set up a very overall color of my palette is already set up. So at this point, I'm just adding a little bit of coloring to that background. And like I mentioned before, this being already the 5th iteration of my issue, I wanted to go for something different. So this particular environment or background, I should say, there's not really much in it. It's literally just a spotlight, keeping it simple. Again, keeping things a little bit different. On the past, I would have made a whole entire forest happening back there, but because of the angle that we have, because of that composition, these characters literally taking over the whole entire cover, didn't really call for too much happening on the background. Otherwise it would just be too overwhelming. So trying to create that balance, lots of intricate details for my characters, then to balance it out, having a simple background is probably a good call. So another thing that I'm doing here is working with the hue saturation options. These allow me to just try different colors. As you can see there, I'm choosing between what looks best, a blue color on the background, or maybe that yellow. Now, ultimately, comic book covers, right? The purpose of comic book covers is to stand out, is to make a comic book, right? Your comic book stand out from what, right? So you think of it as you walk into a store, a comic book store, and you have all these comic books just laying there, right? How can you make one comic book stand out? And what artists at the time started thinking is that, okay, how can we make it striking? And therefore they started adding a lot of yellow to these covers. And when you look at old school vintage comic books, their covers are mostly yellow, if not yellows and reds, and very vibrant colors, right? These colors will literally call out your attention, in a very direct way, because subconsciously these colors, often when we see them in nature, they symbolize either trouble or you have to pay attention to them somehow, and we are wired to do this. Long story short, when we look at, on the streets, any signs of kids crossing, right? Those are, yellow signs. They, when you're driving, they want you to pay attention to those signs, right? You have reds. Reds are also very vibrant colors that will call out your attention. Stop signs are color red. Okay, and at any rate, those techniques have also been used on comic book covers to do the same exact thing, call out your attention, and to stand out from hundreds, if not thousands, of different comic book covers that you would see once you go into a comic book store. They want to call out that attention, call you out. So anyways, that's just what that is, and that's what I was trying to achieve as well. And therefore I decided to go to the color yellow. The actual logo of the Wild Warriors is already red, so I got that red and yellow combination. Where do you also see these type of colors, right? Kind of think about that for a second. Why are these colors so important to us when we see them in nature? Red and yellow, is literally the color of fire, right? You got to be careful with that. So McDonald's, right? When you're going out there, McDonald's signs, these are their colors, because they know how to call out the attention. No matter where you at, you can see that McDonald's signs 5 to 10 miles away. Okay, so going back to this, that's part of the reason why I decided to go with that yellow background. And now I'm just filling in all the empty gaps. I already got the colors that I need here in my illustration, and I'm just now coloring everything, trying to not leave anything behind or uncolored, right? That would be very bad at this stage, because I think out of all the artwork that you'll be creating an artwork that is very solid, very well detailed for a cover is a priority. But however, even though it's a priority, I'm not too crazy of those comic book companies that make their artwork super striking, and then you open up the comic book and it is literally nothing like it inside of the comic book. The artwork is totally different. Sometimes they literally just hire one artist to do the cover, and then a total different artist, to do the inside artwork. It's very commonly used. It is what it is. Me, I like consistency, guys. I already said that many times. So therefore, I like my artwork to be cohesive with the artwork that you would see inside of the comic book. So yes, of course, I spend a little bit of more time. I give it a little bit of more love to my cover than I do some of the panels. But sometimes it's just the equal amount. It's literally an equal amount of effort that goes into the inside work and the outside cover. But of course, again, you know, just for marketing reasons, you got to make sure that that cover does look striking and does looks nice. Okay, so we keep going with filling in those gaps. This process is, at this point, can be a little bit repetitive. I'm still want to show you guys as much as possible. So sure, I can edit this out. You guys already understand what's going on, but that's not the purpose of why we're doing this, right? The whole idea is that you guys see the, you know, minimally edited version of things. And all I did here for editing was the footage, speeding it up a little bit, speeding up a little bit of that footage so things don't go like super slow. I've done that in other videos, and you know, people have told me, hey, they're just too long. So it's okay, I don't mind that. I much rather you guys complaining because I give you too much instead of complaining because I give you too little. So that's a good problem to have. I don't mind that. The other editing that I do is just adding a little bit of soundtrack, a little bit of music, so that you guys can hear my voice with more ease. And you know, I think it also adds a little bit of that entertainment value to you guys, makes it bearable. But yeah, so that's as much editing as it goes into this type of videos. I would like to know from you guys what else maybe you would like to see as far as that behind the scenes goes. We do have a full schedule of things for on stock for you. But you know, if you do have any suggestions, comments, please make sure to let me know. Okay, now once you have placed those flat colors there, in this process I use the lasso tool, as you guys can tell right there, to select the areas that will have a little bit of lighting, a little bit of highlights. I select them, and then by using the gradient tool, I just dropping a little bit of shade, whether it's a darker shade or a lighter shade, right? A little bit of that highlight to have the colors really pop, and just notice how much dimension that adds to the whole entire thing, right? When you have that combination of the highlights, the shadows, and the inking together, it just gets you to that comic book feel, to that comic book style, right? It's just right there. There are so many different techniques nowadays to create comic books. One of my friends, he does comic books using watercolor. The guy is a madman. He's a madman using watercolors. That is a technique that I wouldn't mind at some point experiment with. I've done some tests here and there. I think that it looks good. It has that traditional feel to it that I really like. However, it just takes a little bit longer because, you know, there's not really a way back. You know, it's like traditional inking. Sure, yeah, you can fix it, but you know, the idea is that you're not constantly making mistakes and that you're not constantly having to fix things. that's just very time consuming and can really drain you. I remember inking traditionally way back when, and you know, you needed to have that whiteout, right? Having that whiteout handy because you were gonna use it. You know, sometimes, you know, when you screw up too much that not even the whiteout, you know, will help you out, then you literally had to cut a piece of paper and then stick it on top, and not ideal, not ideal. So that, therefore, you know, those flexibilities that comes from using digital come in very handy. In experimenting, you can experiment as much as you want, with no really consequences. You know, if you're afraid that you're going to do a mistake or you're going to try something new that you have not tried before, just use a different layer. Simple as that. Create a new layer, do whatever you want there, try things, and learn from it. Ultimately, it just allows you to feel a little bit more free in that sense, because you're learning every step of the way. So all good things are very positive, right? You are in it to win it. You are working as an artist, and you want to make sure that you explore as much techniques as possible, and that's what we're trying to do here. Give you my 2 cents of how I would approach something, and hopefully then you will have an idea of how to tackle that, you know, that situation, that process, right? That area that might give you issues. You gotta make sure when you're at this stage already creating your beautiful comic book cover that you have studied thoroughly anatomy. I think for any serious artist out there, studying the study of anatomy is and figure drawing is so essential, so important. Do not neglect that, guys. I've been doing life drawing for many years, and while doing life drawing, you get to learn a lot about how to approach the, you know, anything on the human figure, from the face to the hands to the feet to the toes. Like, you literally learn so much from that. I would recommend going to live drawing sessions. There are many cities here in the United States that offer them. If you go to any art institutions, they would tend to offer those, and maybe you don't get access to that. I would suggest then hitting up the library, because there are many books that still show the progress and show different models that you can draw from. Yes, so live drawing, always a good thing to have under your belt. And let's go ahead and see the final product here. I think we're about done. Here you have it, guys. The Wall Warriors official cover for issue 5. I would like to thank you so much for joining me this time around. I'll see you guys next time.